Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm joined by a very special guest. We're joined by Marco D'Amico. He is the senior editor for the RG Media, co-host of the Star and D'Amico show. Has also been featured on TSN 690, CBC News, Global News, and CTV News. Marco, as we kind of talked about off air, I know you're mostly Habs, so we got the Habs represent behind me as well. So we're going to talk some Habs, potential trades. We'll talk about some predictions throughout the season, moving into potentially a playoff year for the Montreal Canadiens and maybe a deeper playoff year. So we'll go over all of that. Maybe just give a bit of your background on what you're up to these days.
Yeah, I'm frankly just trying to count the jerseys behind you, like how many of those teams are there. Um, yeah, I mean my background, is the most unconventional journalist background possible. Never plan on doing this, but sometimes the field that grabs you instead of you grabbing it, and here we are. So I cover the Montreal Canadiens. I'm a beat reporter for the RG Media and BPM Sports, which is a local French radio station here in Montreal. Cover day to day with the Canadiens. So I'm tasked with covering, interviewing the players, going to games, in the dressing room post game, talking to the coaching staff, etc. So 360 coverage when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens, but to the detriment of my wife's opinion of me, I also watch a ridiculous amount of hockey when it comes to other franchises as well, including many that I see behind you at this time in terms of jerseys. So it's always good to keep your eye out to branch out nationally and whatnot. So that's what I try to do on a semi-regular basis when I'm not completely overwhelmed with what's going on in Montreal.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I totally feel that. I think for me, I've bounced in so many different directions. Like I've been very Leaf centric at times, and I've also been kind of all around
That's a
the
full-time
NHL and
job.
hockey. Yeah, no, 100%. So I mean, there's been so many different things I've done in hockey, and I've been following your work for a couple years now. So I mean, man, you're pretty dialed. Like I gotta say, and any Habs fans, if you guys haven't. And I would say just overall hockey fans, if you haven't connected with Marco yet or followed him on socials, I'll make sure I plug all that in description. We'll plug it at the end of the episode. So, yeah, Marco, you've been doing some great stuff. I know, as we mentioned off air, my buddy Anthony, the Don, we'll call him,
The
spoke
great
highly of
dawn
you.
of hockey.
Yes, sir. So we'll have to do a
Shout
group
out Anthony.
Shout out Anthony. We'll have to do a group collab at some point. But yeah, Marco, I wanted to bring you on. The Habs are definitely a hot topic for a lot of different lenses, I would say, for a team that's on the rise, you could say, for a team that might be one of the better teams in the Atlantic Division as it sits right now. Obviously, a team like Tampa has been really running and rolling, but you'd probably put Montreal in the next tier right after that. So overall, maybe start off with your overall consensus right now as we're US Thanksgiving. I would say in comparison to where you were feeling going into the season, how confident you were, and kind of where the Montreal Canadiens are right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a forward perspective, notwithstanding all the injuries, they have lost Kirby Doc, they have lost Patrick Laine, and they lost Alex Newhook, who was on a tear before he had his injury, unfortunately, a couple of weeks ago. So, notwithstanding missing basically a third line or a second line, depending on where you view it, the Canadians have done pretty well when it comes to their offensive ability. It's actually been just an underwhelming performance in net. And that used to be a strength for this organization, was that Samuel Montembeault would always be kind of the guy, and the defense would kind of form in front of him. Well, now it's the other. It seems to be the other way around. There's a little bit of uncertainty when it comes to Montembeault's play. Jakub Dobeš has played well, but has also had a little bit of instability as well. So there is kind of a goalie carousel happening right now, and it kind of hurts the team because they're actually playing quite well overall as a team defensively. One of the better goals expected
Mhm.
against in the NHL. They're rather low for the output, so they're definitely getting scored on more than they should, more than you normally would see. And so offensively, I mean, you have to look at the Nick Suzuki's, the Cole Caulfields, Uri Slavkovskis, but then there's the second wave under that. Ivan Demidov coming into the league right now, Oliver Kapanen, those guys playing well as rookies. And so, like, the Canadians are in a good spot. Obviously, nowhere near a finished product. This team is still rebuilding, no matter what the headlines say. And so they're still going to be looking to add pieces to the future to I would say bolster their top six and certainly kind of funnel in some of these other younger players playing in Europe and the NCAA.
Yeah, that's a great summary. And I would also say, and I know the Habs goaltending issues have kind of been a consistent trend this season. But of course, I'm sure some of it's been a little bit of the absence of Caden Gooley as well. And I would say
Yep.
also probably just kind of the growing pains still. Like even a guy like Lane Hudson, I think he's looked so mature at such a young age here. But obviously, that defensive game as well, even with a purely offensive defenseman, is going to come and be a little bit stronger as well. So I would say there's a few of those aspects in the defense group. I don't know if you want to say anything on that.
Yeah, I think defensively is probably the Canadians' organizational strength. They've got, I'd say, probably 8 defensemen that could probably play in the league right
Hmm.
now, arguably 9. So it is a strength of theirs, but it's funneling these guys in and getting these guys used to it. I mean, Mike Matheson and Alex Carrier are the only defensemen over the age of 30 on that team, or even close to that. I think Carrier, I believe, is in his late 20s, rather.
Yeah,
So Noah Dobson, Lane Hudson, Caden Gooley, Jaden Struble, Arbor Jackeye, recently Adam Engstrom, and even David Reinbacher playing in Laval, all guys 25 and under. And so it takes a little bit of time to gel in terms of their defense. And losing a guy like Gooley, obviously it hurts. This is a guy that's physical, that plays good minutes on the PK. They're leaning heavily on Mike Matheson to kind of fill those minutes, asking a little bit more of Alex Carrier, for better or for worse, to take in those extra defensive missions. And as recently as last night, even Lane Hudson is taking a regular shift on the penalty kill. So it goes to show that they're trying to diversify the roles a little bit, and that comes with its set of growing pains as well. And especially when you try to build a defensive system where you're able to play more of a man-to-man box out style of defense, it's a little harder to do when you don't have your best elements in place. And so, Caden Gooley, his injury is unfortunate, but it also provides, I would say, a significant amount of opportunity for some of the guys I've mentioned to rise a little bit and take on more responsibility.
for sure. And I know the focus is right now for the Montreal Canadiens, but I mean, myself, any other fan, I would say for you as well, the forward thinking is always there. Do you have a sense right now, or anything you've heard, or just kind of looking into, I would say, a playoff potential, but also the offseason for the Montreal Canadiens? Like you mentioned Engstrom, you mentioned Struble, obviously Jack Eye, and then Gooley, Hudson. We're all talking left shot defensemen there. So 5 left shot
Yep.
guys all in
Yep.
the equation. A guy like Mike Matheson, pending UFA. What's your
Yep.
sense on that? And I think that's an important conversation for the Montreal Canadiens because he's been a key leader in that room. He's, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, one of the more veteran guys on that defense core. Where is that situation at? Have they talked extension, you think? And also, do you think he's a plan with all those other guys knocking on the door in terms of top 4 and top 6 roles on that team?
I think the way that they use Mike Matheson, the team would take a step back if they were to lose Mike Matheson. Like you can make the argument that maybe more of Mike Matheson's minutes should go to someone like Lane Hudson, but Mike Matheson is getting all his minutes at even strength or on the penalty kill. He no
Hmm.
longer plays on the power play because it's now Hudson and Dobson on both waves.
Yeah.
So a lot of those are minute crunching and difficult minutes. Like it's not a role that you could just give to somebody else. And if I would argue that if Caden Gooley weren't so injury prone, or I wouldn't say prone, but wouldn't have the injury history that he has and have more reliability in being able to suit up for 75 plus games a season, the need to retain a Mike Matheson would be, I guess, a little less severe. But I think now they have kind of no choice but to evaluate what they have within their roster. That's why you're seeing guys like Arbor Jackeye or Jaden Struble or Adam Engstrom, as most recently as this week, getting calls, getting put into different situations so they could test them. And then, yeah, with a guy like Mike Matheson, you're sitting down, you're going to have a negotiation. They haven't had deep negotiations with the player. That's nothing new. It was the same thing with Jake Evans last year. Things kind of kick up a little bit in January and then come to a head sometime around the trade deadline. I can't foresee the Montreal Canadiens going into this trade deadline without a sense of what the Matheson camp would like to do, notwithstanding, an actual contract being signed.
Hmm.
You have to have a sense of what you're going to do, because if the Canadians don't sign Mike Matheson, you have to cash in on that value. You're not at a contending status yet. But if they do retain the services, or they have an idea that they will retain the services of Mike Matheson, Well, then that gives you options lower in your lineup to maybe commodify and take some of these younger defensemen that I just named and use them in a trade so that you can get what is the biggest need for the Montreal Canadiens right now, a full stop number two center. And so that's where you're weighing the pros and cons of each player, where they can go, what their ceiling is. And you mentioned all these guys being left shots. You know, you look at a guy like Adam Engstrom, he's a left shot that's played right D for 95% of his career. So it's actually there's more to the puzzle than meets the
Mhm.
eye. And so I don't envy Kent Hughes, general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, in being able to make these decisions, but they're definitely coming to a head, I would say, in the next 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, this is a actually a great transition into the rest of the conversation here because I think, well, there's one question I want to ask you, and that might be the price tag that comes with Mike Matheson, but also the consideration on who you might trade and if that's a big second line center with a big cap hit or whoever else you have to sign moving forward. I was
Mhm.
just kind of thinking of comparables off the top of my head. Like I was thinking of what the Rangers just gave Gavrikov in the offseason, but also maybe like
That's
a
it.
guy like Provorov with Columbus. Like it's in around that $7 to $8.5 million in terms of a comparison for Matheson. Is that where your head's at for Matheson for a price tag? And do you think the Montreal Canadiens should pay it? Do you think Habs fans want the Habs to pay for it?
You never want to pay for something, no matter what fan base. It's always going to be too much, unless you're Lane Hudson, in which case you take
Yeah.
a discount. But wait,
Yeah.
so has every other young Canadians player under this management team. So
Yeah.
it'd be really weird to see one of their veterans go for the full bag if they sign in Montreal. I just don't see it. And plus, you also have to factor in that Mike Matheson, although repped by Phil LeCavalier at Cortex, his original agent was Kent Hughes.
Mm,
So there is a level of reciprocity there. There is a level of amicability, and these two camps met at the in Buffalo at the combine. What now? 6 months ago
yeah.
to discuss his future. So there is an understanding that both sides would like to get a deal done. I'm not necessarily worried about that. The only thing that everyone is going to be worried about, Mike Matheson will be 32 at the end of his deal. So, term has to be kind of something you look at, right? Because you don't want to. You talked about Gavrikov, you talked about Provorov. Those guys are in the prime of are still in the prime of their careers, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
Matheson's not. He's a horse,
Yeah.
but when you're looking at age, right? And
Mhm.
Provorov, if I'm not mistaken, was a 2015 draftee, so like he just turned 28.
Yeah.
You sign him for 7 years, 8 years. He, clocks out at 36 at the end of his contract. Well, if you can sign Mike Matheson to a 7 million, $7.5 million contract till age 36, so say a 3 or 4 year deal, I don't think anybody's complaining.
No.
I don't think anybody's complaining. I think the
That
player is happy. He
Yeah, that's
gets
what I was
some
just about to
term,
ask you because I think it's probably in around a 4 or 5 year deal, right? Max.
anywhere between
Max.
3 and 5, anywhere between 3 and 5 years. The only
Yeah.
way I see them going beyond that is if the AAV is Brad Marchand level stupid,
Yeah.
like has to be really low, which I sincerely doubt is going to be the case. Like Ken Hughes does not come off to me as a general manager that is in a position where he needs to stick his neck out when it comes to contract negotiations. A direct example of that, Caden Gooley, we talked about him, $5.5 million, but sign him for 6 years while he was signing the rest of his core to 8. And I
Yeah.
think a reason for that is you want to give yourself a window in case there is a continued risk of injury to be able to get out of that problem or to be able to trade the contract and so on and so forth. So with a guy like Matheson, maybe you afford him trade protection, but in consequence, you take a little bit off the term. And so like that's the ball game that's being played. I'm not expecting much drama in this case, just because the two parties know each other quite well.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say though is if you asked Mike Matheson where he wants to play moving forward, it's in Montreal. And the little wrinkle I would add, Mike Matheson has never competed for a team or played for a team that's really competed for a Stanley Cup. And if the Canadians are going in the trajectory that they're going, they're trending towards being a competitive team in the playoffs for years and years to come. Would you really want to leave that now that the going gets good? And so that's the team culture kind of aspect of the negotiation that a lot of fans don't take into consideration, but that Kent Hughes uses against every single one of his players at every single negotiation because players want to play in Montreal, and especially if you're a local kid. Mike Matheson, born and raised, I'd say about 5 minutes away from where I'm standing, and coming back home, being able to build a life, and having his young family here, it means a lot more than the extra couple $100,000 at the end of the day.
For sure. Yeah. And I think honestly, based on the feedback you gave, like I was thinking 7 million times about 4 or 5. So I think it's in around that.
Yeah.
Maybe it comes lower and he does Montreal a
Well,
favor. Sorry, go
it
ahead.
wouldn't it wouldn't be out of the norm. Like, this is what happens when you have a Cole Caulfield that says, I don't want to earn a penny more than Nick Suzuki. He's the
Yeah.
captain. And then you have a Uri Slafkovsky, who was a first overall pick, go, I don't want to earn more than Nick Suzuki. And then you have Lane Hudson that goes, yeah, 8 times 9 is good, but I'll just take a little bit off the top there just so you can help the team win. 885. Noah Dobson was asking for 10 million on Long Island, signs for 9.5 in Montreal. So there's a culture of that where they're being asked to take a little less to help the team moving forward. And if the
Mhm.
salary cap continues to increase the way that it is, I mean, we're talking potentially 130 million by 2028. Well, you're going to be able to turn around. Your core is going to be locked in for what, 50, 60 million. You're going to have a 60 to 70 million dollar buffer to go and get guys to fill out your top six and your bottom pair.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to have.